So good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for joining us for our second Power Pairing event of 2021. My fingers are crossed, as are my toes, my legs, my arms, everything, that by the time we get to the third one of these, we may be in person and or at least hybrided so that we can have our folks from around the state joining us. As you join today, please drop your name, your company, and where you're joining us from today in the chat box, and we can get to know you in this room before we all have some one-on-ones together. No need to get specific. I like to tell this joke tongue-in-cheek. When we tested this platform, I put my title as my home address, except I called myself the Queen of the corner of Alberta and 24th. And it was Ruthie on the TAO side who let me know that I was telling all of our members exactly where I lived and that I should probably decide to change that if I wanted to protect my privacy. So now you know a little bit about me. If I have not met you, my name is Kara Toronto and I am the COO at TAO. I'm really excited to be here. And as we get started, I'd like to give a little bit of background on this program and how it sort of evolved over the last 2 years, including our pandemic version. So way back in 2019, we were hearing from many of our women tech executives that there wasn't one space to connect and collaborate. And so we started a series focused on supporting industry leaders by bringing them together. And the region has many women serving in tech leadership roles. The challenge is we're still too often the only women on our leadership teams. And we get siloed into our functional roles where HR leaders meet with HR leaders, finance leaders meet with finance leaders, and so on. I actually spoke to the founder of an organization called the Athena Alliance today, and she founded that group for the exact same reason. So we envisioned a group that was open to women leaders at both tech and tech-enabled companies, regardless of your functional role, to network and learn. And the TAO team, Riley O'Brien, who I know is out there, added one additional component that encouraged our leaders to bring a future leader or mentee to ensure that we would continue to build our dynamic pipeline of women talent. So in 2020, we ran one magical in-person event at the Trailblazers and 3 virtual events. But they served as a connection point for more than 160 women leaders in our tech ecosystem, which I think is pretty impressive given the Zoom and virtual fatigue. So we are really thankful for the sponsors that continue to make these events possible. And before we get into the networking portion of this event, I'd like to introduce Teresa Schnetz, Director and Market Executive for Merrill Lynch, to say a few words.
Thank you, Kara. It is a pleasure to be here this afternoon, and Bank of America and Merrill Lynch is thrilled to be sponsoring this important convening to empower and embolden women's tech leadership. At Bank of America, we're committed to removing barriers for women, and we support women who work at our company and then in the communities that we serve. Locally in Portland, we invest in nonprofits like Dress for Success, Oregon, Girls Inc., Adelante Mujeres, and many more that are specifically committed to supporting women and their economic mobility. At our company, we're committed to having women represented at all levels of the company, and we have resources specifically tailored to attracting and retaining female talent. In fact, we have an entire program that's dedicated just to supporting women of technology and operations at Bank of America. So we also believe it's really important to support local organizations like Technology Association of Oregon, who are creating spaces like this that are fostering learning, networking, and mentorship for women in our community. I myself have personally benefited from multiple strong female mentors throughout my career, and I'm pleased to be associated with this event this evening and continue to learn from the phenomenal women leaders in our community. We know that women bring unique qualities to the table that enable us to thrive as leaders of tech and tech-enabled organizations, and we're proud to be a part of this event tonight. So thanks so much for including us.
Oh, thank you. That was wonderful. We're so happy to have you here. Speaking of amazing women leaders, it's my pleasure now to introduce Luann Abrams, who's the founder and CEO of CEOX. I would also like to say that she's my friend. CEOX is an organization that connects highly qualified female CEO-ready candidates to CEO and board roles. And we thought this was the perfect opportunity for her to showcase her work to some women that are ready to move into those roles. So Luann, please.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me here. So a few years ago, I was sitting at the annual meeting of a venture capital fund that I was invested in. And these are really typically very interesting meetings. You get to hear about the new companies they've invested in, often meet some of their leadership. And it's also when they tend to announce new CEOs of some of their portfolio companies, because it's not uncommon for founding CEOs to be replaced through the growth cycle of their companies. So at this particular meeting, they announced the new CEO of a women's healthcare platform that was in place to track your fertility as a woman and your periods. And sure enough, the new CEO was a man. And I thought, that seems wrong. And I turned to one of the partners. I'm like, you couldn't find a woman for this role? And he's like, well, we tried. And so not much later, I decided to dig in with this firm as well as talk to other venture funds. And what I found is that particularly at these small and mid-sized venture funds, their management fee is stretched pretty thin. They don't typically have an in-house talent coordinator who might help with these searches, and they don't have the funds to pay for executive recruiters when these situations arise. And so it's just the investors going into their networks to find the next CEO. And with most investors still being men in the venture world, they go into their network, and it's just not a surprise that they find people that look like them, think like them, and act like them. And obviously it's a problem for these women that are being overlooked, but really it's a problem for these venture funds because women-led companies are shown to perform better, generate more revenue, use invested dollars to a better effect. So there's a real financial incentive for these venture funds to source women and diverse candidates for these roles. So I started going out to my network of successful CEOs and senior leaders and saying, hey, do you have women in your network that would make great CEOs for these growing startups? And I started talking to many, many amazing women. They were smart and talented and successful and could clearly lead smaller companies to success. And so that was the start of CEOX. At its core, we're a database of CEO-ready women, and we've been used for COO roles, CEO roles, managing director roles, and board roles for these startups. And beyond that, we've created this community around these CEO-ready women. To Kara's point, as you get higher and higher in your network, women tend to have fewer peers. And so we're bringing those women together. We are throughout the U.S., so we're bringing people with diverse geography, diverse industry, because we are industry agnostic, and letting them network together. And we provide different programming to help them get to their next career goal, but ultimately be that support structure for them. So when they are in these CEO roles, they have the CEOX community to rely on. And so that is pretty much CEOX. And just for the CEOs and the senior leaders out there, nominating women in your network to CEOX who could benefit from the network as well as are looking for that CEO role. We are here to help. We do not charge our women anything to be a part of our network, which is very important to me personally. And we're just getting more women in leadership.
Thanks, Luann. If y'all can see your little emojis down there, I say give the clapping hands to Luann for the work that she's doing. It is so impressive. I'm going to take us into the networking part of this event. And we do have one other sponsor. She's going to chat with us later when we come back, because it is through her that we got these amazing women to speak and have a cool moderator. So Packstar is also one of our sponsors, and Peggy Miller is going to say a few words later. But Peggy, I wanted to get you to say hi since you were on the screen before we transitioned into networking.
Yes. So hi, everybody. It's good to see you all, even if it's virtually. And I'm really glad about CEOX, because I can tell you that even the larger private equity and venture firms still have the traditional male leadership network. So I hope you expand your horizons and knock on even some of those bigger group doors, because they need what you're doing, and the rest of us need it as well. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
And that's what this power pairing is all about. So really, women helping women to advance in our careers and be our best.
I love, this is like my favorite day of the quarter. So I'm really excited that we're here. Thanks, Peggy. And we'll hear from Peggy a little bit later too, because she is amazing. All right. So you're on this platform. You're probably like, what is around the world? Why do I have potentially 2 different invitations? But we got feedback from our events in 2020 that participants really valued the opportunity to introduce themselves. And that would be like more when I called on folks to unmute themselves and go off script and say, hi, where are you from? Where do you work? And it took a while. So even though it makes you feel connected to the larger community, it's a little tricky when we've got so many folks. So we now do a round of one-on-one networking at the beginning of all of our power pairing events, so that we can get to know each other and work on building the relationships of mentorship and support that has been mentioned in the last 10 minutes that we know are hugely impactful for women, and particularly for women working in tech. So as we get started, I'm going to do a brief rundown of Run the World. So this is our event platform that was founded and developed by a dynamic pair of women. That's why I tell everyone it's more intuitive and much more fun. This platform allows the panel discussions to be more interactive, and it has a cocktail party feature for networking and personal connection in a virtual setting. So if you fill out your profile, it's going to be accessible to all attendees. And when we go into the cocktail party, you will have access to your camera and microphone. So for tonight's networking, you'll be randomly paired with another participant for a 5-minute conversation. And then following your first conversation, you'll be paired up with another person and launched directly into a conversation. It's a little less disconcerting than being sucked out of a Zoom room, and it feels a little more natural, like bumping into somebody on your way to get another drink or go across the room to talk to somebody different. It's my favorite networking that we've done online. So we're going to do 4 rounds, and then we'll bring you back to the main room, and we'll get started with the main event, getting to know entrepreneur and investor Julie Harrelson. And if you need a prompt to get started in tonight's conversations, think of some of the things that Luann just shared about women in leadership roles. And our question will be, why do you think women so often underestimate their own leadership abilities? So without further ado, let's launch into some networking, and we'll see you back here in about 20 minutes. All right. I think we're all back. Wow, we've picked people up along the way. We're at 39. Okay. Gosh, I feel like WWE, and I wish I could say it's time for the main event, but I have a script and I'm not allowed to do that. So welcome back. I hope you made some good connections and enjoyed a taste of something that resembles in-person networking. I feel like when we do in-person networking again, someone tries to drag me away after 5 minutes, I may lay down on the floor and invoke a 3-year-old temper tantrum. But I'm delighted to reintroduce Peggy Miller, the CEO of Packstar and TAO's 2020 Sam Blackman Tech Exec of the Year award winner, who will introduce tonight's moderator. Peggy has been a consistent supporter of TAO's endeavors to empower more women to become leaders in the tech sector, and we are so grateful for her for that. As we find ourselves continuing to work remotely and facing new opportunities and challenges as women, technologists, and leaders, we're really excited about the momentum that is building around this group. And we're grateful for the sponsorship that we received from Peggy and Packstar over the past few years. And right before I hand it off to Peggy, I'm going to remind folks that are speakers, but not speaking during the main event, to turn off their camera and microphone. So Peggy, I am handing it over to you, and I'll see everybody at the end.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kara. I think you all understand, and we've been in these sessions before, but Packstar is focused on developing women leaders in tech. And I'm so pleased that we've been able to continue these programs and to support one another. If we stick together, we can help each other excel. And these kinds of programs where we interview and get to hear about people's stories, I think help reinforce and help us find our own path forward when you hear about other success. So I'm very pleased to have the privilege of introducing our moderator tonight, Candace Beakey. And Candace, I met you right after you first arrived in Portland. I felt really bonded with you ever since the first time we spoke. And so I'm delighted that you were willing to be our moderator tonight. Candace has a very prestigious career so far. She's been publisher of the Albuquerque Business First and editor-in-chief of Houston Business Journal. And prior to that, she was with Business Review West. But she is now and I want to get your title right, Candace. So okay.
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute. I'm publisher, yes.
Publisher and president of the Portland Business Journal. And I want to say that I always look forward to both the printed copy and the online copy every day, because I feel very informed about a wide range of issues in our community. So with that, I'd like to introduce Candace, who will be our moderator in talking to Julie Harrelson. And Julie, thank you so much for being here tonight, too. So I'm going to turn it over to Candace.
Thank you, Peggy. Thank you so much for inviting me to do this. And I have to just say, you can tell I'm the one not tech person here, that I can't even find the unmute button. That's okay, though. Julie will forgive me. So as we start this fireside chat, I want to thank the women of TAO. Kara, thank you. Ruthie and Riley. All of these folks will be engaging with everyone in the chat. So please keep the conversation going as we get to know Julie. And let's get to know Julie Harrelson. Julie Harrelson is an entrepreneur, investor, and community builder. She has held multiple executive roles in design, technology, and venture funding, and founded Cascade Angels Fund in 2013. With business partner Robert Pease, she founded Cascade Seed Fund in 2019. Since then, Cascade has invested over $8 million in 50 investments in Oregon and the Pacific Northwest in companies that employ more than 200 people and generate more than $44 million in revenue. So please join me in welcoming Julie. Hi, Julie.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I love the speed dating on the app. It was awesome.
I loved that too. I had such fun that I felt bad when I would get pulled away. I wanted to let's keep going.
I know. Yeah. It's a great app. It makes you really feel connected.
Yeah.
So what do you get? So let's get down to some questions. What do you
I got some questions for you. Are you ready? I got some good ones.
Stump the interviewee.
So Julie, first question is, have you seen the movie Memento?
Yes.
I think we should do the interview Memento style. I feel like we start with now and then go backward. What do you think?
Yeah, that's fine. Let's do it.
Okay. So tell us about, in your words, the job you do every day.
Okay, I'm going to start at the 50,000 foot level and I'll go to sea level really quick. So at 50,000 feet, the reason I'm doing this job is to really change the economic and innovation future for Oregon and the Pacific Northwest. And what we do day to day is we invest money in seed stage companies. So companies that have a team, some revenue, they built it, they know it works. There's somebody interested beyond their friends and family, and they're growing a business toward an exit. And so we've invested in companies anywhere from Leg Up, and there are a couple of women executives from Leg Up on the line tonight, to which is oriented around childcare, to Deep Surface, which does internet security software. So we're industry agnostic.
And you said you wanted to execute change. That was the big goal. Why do we need change? What needs to change?
Well, I like the idea of more money moving more quickly, particularly through Oregon, because I think it's like fuel. It's fuel for innovation. It's fuel for creativity. It's fuel for economic well-being. It's fuel for economic diversity. And so that's my motto. I've been very lucky in my career to kind of ride some waves and own some companies that were successful. And so this is a way for me to give back. It is, we are definitely profit oriented. We want a return on those funds, but we also want a return for our community in terms of jobs and economic diversity and economic well-being, which Oregon has had its challenges, right? We've had a lot of challenges in this last year with the pandemic and the fires, and the culture of the state is changing with the influx of people, migration, because, for example, Bend, where I live, is really a Zoom town, right? There's a lot of people that have moved in the last 6 to 18 months, let's say. So the face of our state and our whole region, and I include Northern California in this as well, I think is really changing rapidly.
So what does an average day look like for you?
I do a lot of communication, and every job I've ever had has been that way. I spend a lot of time, right now I'm spending a lot of time fundraising. So we're raising our next fund, which means one-on-one conversations with really interesting people and institutions that might be interested in a fund like ours. I spend a fair bit of time doing what I think of as portfolio cultivation, so talking with our CEOs and founders about things that might be slowing them down or opportunities that they have and how they might leverage those. I walk my dog 3 times a day.
Wow, lucky dog.
Yeah, well, what I do is I put my headphones on and I have my phone and I walk around where I live with my dog. Because otherwise I'd be sitting, my chair has a permanent dent in it from all the Zoom calls I've done in this last, 14, 16 months. But I think it's really important to get up and move in terms of, if you think about being an executive as being a high performance athlete, you gotta keep moving and keep your own well-being intact in order to be able to offer any kind of insight or well-being to others.
How do you, and I'll ask this broadly and you answer it however you'd like, but how has the pandemic changed you?
That is such a great question. So I am what we lovingly call a noisy introvert. So if you saw me at an event, you'd be like, oh, she's really an extrovert. But honestly, I do much better when I'm kind of on my own and in the quiet. And so for me, the isolation and the quarantine and staying at home was really a blessing, because it helped me to kind of settle down in my own energy and really be able to tap into that in order to provide the insight of all my years of hard knocks being an entrepreneur. I think it created a depth of empathy that is different than before, just given the kinds of challenges that we've all been through. And I think it's also heightened the need to be to make sure that we all make sure I fill up my own tank, my own reservoir, in order to provide any kind of clarity to other people.
Has it changed the types of companies that you are investing in?
No, but we did look at each other. Robert Pease and I looked at each other at the beginning of the pandemic and said, "Hey, should we stop investing?" And we just decided to let our process work for us. So we democratized our process for selecting companies early on. And I wanted to speak a little bit about this because I think it's indicative of how things can change. So instead of having to know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy to get to our fund, we have an open application period, and it runs throughout the whole year. And anybody who looks at our criterion that thinks that they fit that can apply. And then we have a structured process that we run companies through to select them. It's led to, in this portfolio, we have 33% of our companies that are run by women and 27% that are founded by people of color. So we think that by having an open funnel, in other words, changing our policy around how we select companies, has made a difference. And this came from years of me being underestimated and really having to work for funding and work for growth. And I thought, I'm just going to open the gate and people can self-select. And so if they fit that criterion, then they get a conversation with us. So no matter what, they fit that, but they're not quite ready for us, then we will spend a half an hour and help connect those people to other resources, provide insight from our own experiences as entrepreneur, and do that kind of vendor development with companies.
I think that's fascinating. So one of the questions that prompted, I have two. Do you have any idea what the the number of investments made in businesses run by people of color or women are for other funds?
Well, I think I don't know the exact statistic, but it's usually something like 2% or less.
Yeah.
So it's different. And it turns out that if there is a woman or a person of color in the management team making the selection, that more often those companies are given an audience and a platform. So that was part of the method in my madness of doing this. I didn't absolutely have to do it, but I felt an imperative because there are some women on this call that about 20 years ago, we were in Women in Technology together. It was really great. I got matched up with Anne, one of the members. And, we've been working on this for a long time. I think it's why my forehead is so flat. It's from hitting my head against the wall trying to crack it open. But, we've been working at it for a long time. And I think one of the things that I've read in this last few years that really helped me to understand kind of organically what I was trying to do is the scholar Ibram Kendi said, and I'm going to paraphrase here, but it's like, we need more than education, love, and exceptional Black people to change things. We need a change in policy. And I think if we think about policy in the way that we conduct our lives, the way we conduct our businesses, the way we conduct our government, so policy kind of at all levels, that is the way that these things will change. I mean, love and education and being exceptional are great, but like just that small change that we made in terms of, when I started the fund, in terms of opening that gate instead of having it be sort of old school, was really, really helpful.
Do you have any peers doing that same model or even coming close to it?
I think generally, I can't comment specifically, but I will say as a general comment, most of the, we call it deal flow in our industry, which is the flow of opportunities into our funnel. Most of that seems to me to be fairly haphazard. So entrepreneurs don't know where they stand. They do a pitch and they're like, well, they were nice to me. Maybe they'll invest money in me, but that doesn't really, it just might mean that the people are polite, right? And so we have this cadence that we run people through where it's like, okay, we have a conversation with you. We let you know when we'll get back with you. We try. I mean, there have been times where things have fallen through the cracks, but our goal is that everybody knows where they stand at all times and that we're efficient in our process in terms of communication. And I think this comes from having both been entrepreneurs and gone through these, trying to raise money and not knowing how it worked and just getting really confused and not doing it well and wasting time and money, which pulls entrepreneurs off running their core business.
So what were you doing before Cascade?
So I exited a business in 2007, and I was like, it seems like CEOs don't really have enough time to reflect, to plan. So I'm going to be like a CEO capacitator. And I started a boutique consulting practice where my portfolio was primarily working with CEOs and their teams on corporate strategy. So saying, here's where we are, here's where we want to go, what's slowing us down, what could speed us up, and creating a plan and a roadmap that everybody agreed to. Because so often in companies and complex organizations, people think they're going towards the same goal, but it's like you're going on a trip, and one group packs for like they're going to the mountains in the winter, and one group packs like they're going to Aloha, in Hawaii, and then they all get together and they figure out that it's like a boat with wings that they're going. Right? It's like so confusing because there's not alignment, right? There's not values alignment. There's not inclusion as far as who goes along, and there's not a clear sense of what the destination is. And I think you have to start out a bit with the destination and then adjust that as you go. Every great planner, every great artist finds that as you go down the journey and down the path, just like we are on our own life journeys, we may adjust our destination, or we may get to some place that we never, like if you had told me, 10 years ago that I'd be living in Bend running a fund, I would have been like, no, there's absolutely no way I'd be that far from the ocean, number one. And number two, I'm not really fond of venture capitalists. So then I became one. So,
yeah. Well, that's how you change the venture capitalists you don't like, as you become one that you would like.
That's right. And I also think it's important for people to see themselves in things. Like if you see another woman or, someone that you can relate to doing something, it's much easier to feel that you can do it also.
So when you were helping companies and CEOs with their leadership and alignment and strategy, what leadership lessons did you pick up, either good or bad? I think you can learn almost as much from someone struggling in leadership as you can from someone excelling in it.
Well, I'm a big fan of don't be an asshole, pardon my French, but,
Interesting. That's a risky, okay. Going out there, all right.
I'm trying to be real. I see that someone said that this is relatable, and I know it's being recorded, but I've never figured out a way to say that's not crass. But this, I just think it's like, don't mistake my kindness for naivete. It's like you can be kind, you can be firm, you can be self-aware, you can make difficult decisions that not everyone will be happy with, but you don't have to be a jerk about it. And people may disagree, and that does happen. And I think our work environments are a little bit more fraught right now because people are questioning a lot of the ways that business has been traditionally done. And I think anything that we can do as individuals to build our empathy for others is a helpful thing.
I love what you said about we've had to really question how we run things. There are a lot of things I feel like I am open to unlearning in my career, things that I have accepted as, yes, this is how it works when you're a leader. This is what you do. Have you felt that you've had to unlearn things to be a better leader in your career?
Yeah. By the way, that's a beautiful piece of self-awareness on your part to think about that. And I think that if you couple that with curiosity, you're ahead of a lot of people. Because, for example, I was raised in the time where being colorblind was an important feature.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've kind of undertaken a course of self-study in the last 3 years, just reading and reading and reading and having conversations, trying to be real, to understand and figure out not how I can be helpful, but how I can be supportive as a human being to others. And, like those things are really hard. And it's hard not to feel ashamed sometimes. I mean, I've made every mistake in the book around my communication with people and others. But I feel like I have to keep putting myself out there, because things don't change, unless we put ourselves into the flow of change. I remember being really proud of myself in front of a group, a diversity, equity, and inclusion group, about maybe 4 years ago, being really proud of myself talking about being on the board of Planned Parenthood when I was in high school. And the group had an interesting response, which was more that I was part of the problem, because feminists at that time were in part responsible for not including their women of color sisters in success and liberation that was happening. I mean, I came sort of at the end of that, but I was like, God, that's really interesting to me. Like, it had never, ever occurred to me to think that through that way, right? And so, being humble and being open, being curious are a really significant part of success from my standpoint, because others have so much to teach us about where our biases and our blind spots and our lack of empathy are.
I love that. Being humble, being open, being honest. I think that's where I hope we are in our journeys in this world right now. I hope the pandemic has forced us in many ways to try to be more of all of those things. For me, I don't know if you remember that there was this real generational push from Gen X, which I am, against millennials. And everyone was, these millennials want to work so differently, and millennials won't conform. And what are we going to do with these millennials? And after about, 4 or 5 years of bitching about millennials and all the things they wanted to change, I started to really think about what they were expecting, the expectations this generation, to generalize, had on the workplace. And that was when I really started to think, are these bad things? I mean, wanting direct access to the top, removing the patriarchy, removing the org chart, allowing everyone to have some sort of collaboration with the strategy of a company. I think I approached it finally from, instead of trying to cling to the system that we had been taught, and this is how it works, and you don't talk about your pay, and you don't talk about these things, and you wear what you're supposed to wear, even if it's pantyhose.
Yeah.
You remember? I mean, that was a real thing. People would tell us we had to wear pantyhose and you couldn't wear open-toed shoes. And I mean, that's nuts. And today, I guess, what has been your experience with the multi-generational workplaces and leadership?
Well, yeah, I mean, part of what happened for me was that I actually never fit in. And that's why I became an entrepreneur,
Good for you, Julie.
I mean, but I do remember that. Like, I was actually thinking this morning, when I first started my career, women didn't wear pants to work. And how funny that, I mean, it just sounds weird now. And by the way, one of the things that changed for me during COVID is that I let my natural highlights come out, and I hadn't seen my hair color for 22 years. And now people are talking to me about my wisdom all the time. Okay. But yeah, I think that every generation brings its need for change, and it's really good, right? Like I remember, like I have quite a few friends that are younger, and this notion of, for example, not working all the time. That's not necessarily bad. I mean, some of us just really like to work a lot, but the workplaces had to change for that. Or women speaking up about their need for, say, short-term disability or pay during pregnancy, or families speaking up to that. Family leave. Like, people didn't used to talk about their kids at work. Like, when I first started my career, guys never spoke about their kids.
Yeah.
That's just weird, right? To me, it was just a strange thing. So I think that, and the other thing I love about the pandemic is it's made people more human. So, like, their kids run in and say hi on the screen, or their dog, or, like my dog will jump up and look in the screen. And I think that kind of humanity is really, if we think about what will make things sustainable over a period of time, humanity is what will make things sustainable, because it will make us make different choices about each other and what we do and where we put our priorities.
I love that. So let's go back. What did you do before you were consulting with companies on strategy?
So I had a technology company that did a very glamorous thing. That was, we evaluated IT and telephone bills for overbilling. Mm-hmm. And before that, I worked in the telecommunications and software fields. I was primarily, I was an account executive, account manager, national account manager, director of sales and marketing, VP of sales and marketing type. And that was always kind of my saving grace, is that I could talk to anybody about anything and help, assess needs and find solutions. So in the mid-90s, AT&T divested, and there were a lot of opportunities in competitive telcos. And for women to get into tech, it was a great kind of breach of how things had been done previously. And I remember sitting in this big room, and the customer service people were servicing the internet solutions, and all those folks had like tattoos and blue hair, and then the guys in the network operations center were old school telephone company veterans of like 35 years, and then watching these people, from different generations and different cultures interacting. I think it was an interesting time. So I started my career in tech at that point, but I'd always been able to sell things. I started selling Campfire Girl mints when I was, 8 and wanted to win the pin. And so that was kind of my start in business development. And that's always been kind of an underpinning of my work since I began my life.
Well, let's be honest, though. Those cookies kind of sell themselves, Julie. I mean,
I know, but at that time, so we went door to door, right? We didn't have online sales or like sit in front of the store. So I convinced my mom to be the mint mother, which meant we had all the mint inventory in our basement. So we never ran out. And then I had her take me to the suburbs where they were building the new neighborhoods with cul-de-sacs. And I just worked those cul-de-sacs and sell those mints out, right?
That was your territory?
That was my territory. Yeah, it was my early territory. And I don't know where that came from. All my family are in like social services and, the medical field, and somehow I got the sales gene.
I was going to ask you what drew you to that role in sales. I mean, or not just sales, but what drew you to that specific role?
So the thing I've always loved about tech, Candace, is it's been on the leading edge of our culture for, in my lifetime, certainly. And so I like being where the action was and where new things are. And that's why I like my work now, so we get companies in that are based on artificial intelligence, or are innovating the cremation and funeral home experience, or are innovating childcare or education. And so I like that. I like the creativity. So my training actually, when I went to university, was in art and foreign language. Now that does not seem like it has anything to do with business, but I think it does, in the sense that you learn that there's an underlying creative process that says, you have an idea, you bring materials and resources together, and you create something beautiful. And I think that that's also the entrepreneurial experience as well. A lot of people that are entrepreneurs are actually, they're business artists, and they're doing really interesting things. And so I always like being where that energy is, and kind of where it's sort of unknown if it will work or not.
Where did you go to college, Julie?
University of Oregon.
Okay. And where did you grow up?
Tacoma, Washington.
And tell me a little bit about your childhood and how, if at all, you think that informed your career journey.
So I was raised on Puget Sound. My family has been in Tacoma nearly 100 years.
Wow.
So I'm from a place. I think that's really informed my view of the world. I like being from somewhere. My dad still lives there. He's 94. And I was talking to him about the number of friends he has that are still alive. Like they went to high school together. They all grew up together. They got married. They had kids. All this stuff. And they're a really tough. That's a really tough generation. Like they've got a lot of grit. So growing up around boats and tides and ships and bridges and industry that Tacoma had at that time, I think there's a lot about hard work, but there's also a lot about being in nature, and those things are still, really guide my daily life. It's one of the reasons I moved to Central Oregon. I needed to do that for my own kind of mental and physical well-being. And I was always the sensitive soul in my family. So, kind of a precocious little kid. And so having my rowboat, my sailboat, we bought this old rowboat from this Norwegian lady, who'd just had all of her teeth pulled, and my dad and I fixed it up. I think we bought it for $20 and fixed it up. And those are really formative experiences for me. And so community is an important aspect, and I've really put a lot of energy into our entrepreneurial community in the last, number of years that I've been particularly doing the fund.
So I'm going to ask you at least one more question, but I'm cognizant that in about 5 minutes, we're going to open it up to questions.
We had another hour. This is fun.
I know. And I wish we could be in person, but we will. We'll have that chance.
Okay, let's do it.
So my last question is around, a pandemic isn't good for anyone, but it has disproportionately affected people of color. And I didn't realize this, but I did a little bit of research. It's disproportionately affected the LGBTQ community as well. And this is nothing to do with my question, but I do want to just mention this to folks. I didn't realize the LGBTQ community is disproportionately affected every time there's a recession, going back as far as we have data, which really surprised me. And however, women have also been significantly negatively affected. We've seen them leaving the workforce in droves, and many of them, I don't think, feel like they have an option, that they are the one who has to leave to take care of the kids at home. So I'm curious what your outlook is for women and our role in America's workforce in the future.
Just the way you ran that down made me feel simultaneously really sad and really mad.
Yeah, that was my goal. I'm glad that worked.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that.
I want to end on that note, get everybody riled up and upset.
No, it's so it turns out, historically under-resourced people get less resources when there's less resources available, right? It's just a very difficult thing. And I think one of the things that early exposure to Planned Parenthood instilled in me, and also my parents were both involved in public health, is this notion that everybody needs healthcare and opportunity, and I am very concerned about this. So I think that we will have, when you hold a vigil for something, when you're holding it together, like when something bad is happening and you're holding it together, it's like, I'm holding it together, I'm doing fine. It's only when the relief starts to come that everybody starts to kind of let down a little bit. And I feel like in these next couple of years, challenges around health and mental health are going to be more in the forefront, particularly for people who take the burden of the care for their kids, their family, and their community, which tends to be women in a particular way. And so I'll just reel off a few ideas I have. So I'm a big believer in therapy if people can afford it. I have benefited by therapy and coaching. I feel like if we can look after each other, so like I have about 25 people that I'm just kind of trying to help support from behind the scenes. I think if people have money that they can donate, like one of the groups that I donated to this last year was Cascade AIDS Project, because they do a tremendous amount of healthcare, like general healthcare for the LGBTQIA community. And find some friends that, so these are different ways that you can do it, like with or without money, but find some friends that love you no matter what, that you can call on. Build a kitchen cabinet. So like I have 5 or 10 professional connections that I can go to with questions. I know that they'll hold me in respect and confidence if I, need that. So it's sort of starting with yourself, making sure you're okay, making sure others okay, investing money, time, and resources in kind of more of like, let's call it a safety net, I think is going to be really important. And I'm hoping that some of the money that comes through from the federal government will be able to assist some women to go back to work and for some gaps to get filled. But the biggest thing that we can all do, I think, is just make sure that we connect with each other and don't just assume that others are okay.
I think that's wonderful. Thank you, Julie. Now we're going to open it up for a few minutes of Q&A from the audience. There is a grab the mic feature in Run the World that allows you to come on camera and ask your question in person. So if you have a question you'd like to ask Julie directly, take a look at the bottom left of your screen for the icon of a hand holding a mic. Click it and you'll be placed in a queue to talk directly with Julie on camera. And once you're done asking your question, click drop the mic, which who doesn't want to drop the mic, Kara? Come on.
I mean, I do, but I have an audience question that I can start with while people grab the mic.
Sure.
And I'm totally cherry picking, but Julie, after hearing you talk, this is the one I have to go with. What is your response to the phrase, well-behaved women rarely make history?
It's true.
And she leaves it at that.
I'll tell you what. Okay, I want to just talk a little bit about imposter syndrome really quickly, because I think if you want to consciously misbehave and change things, it requires self-awareness. And I think one of the ways that we get put back on our heels is this feeling of imposter syndrome. And I think it comes from two key things. One is, if you've told your whole life and continue to be told that you really aren't doing what you're doing and you're just not that great, you're making it up, you're going to feel that way. And number two, on the kind of internal side of that, I'm not sure we know ourselves well enough often to be able to know whether we're doing something or not. Like I'm constantly surprised when people will say, "Oh, you said something smart." And I'm like, "I did because I'm still learning. I don't know that," and I have to pay attention all the time to actually say, "I have earned some wisdom and success over the course of my life." So I think there's a systemic change that needs to happen externally, but I also think to the extent that we can know ourselves and do the hard work to know what is driving us that's creative and what is driving us that's from trauma, better.
I love that. And we still seem to have a shy crowd, but I've got more questions because people pre-submitted. Let's see. I'm going to ask. All right. So you kind of talked about this, and it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and you talked about knowing yourself. Oh, Ann Marcus is here. Ann, I'll stop. You ask.
No, I'm kind of curious how we prepare girls for adulthood these days in a different way than we have in the past. And I see this in terms of what skills we don't end up having by the time we get out of high school, like balancing our checkbooks or understanding, what kind of choices you have to make for school or for insurance or for all kinds of things. And I'm curious if you had a take on what would have positioned you better in your life had you learned certain things earlier, and what you might recommend that schools teach girls now that they don't.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. And Anne is one of the people that was in Women in Technology, like those 20 years ago together. So it's great. We haven't seen each other for like 20 years. So yeah, you know what? I wish that somebody had told me there was such a thing as entrepreneurialism. I didn't know. Like I grew up in a town where everybody had a job forever. They worked at the mill. They worked in the shipping yards. They worked for the school district. They worked for the government. And I was like always starting businesses. And I didn't really realize that I was an entrepreneur until, not too many years ago, because I was just doing my thing and trying to figure stuff out. And if I had known all these resources were available, it would have been super helpful. So I think the kind of education that integrates like project management, financial management, ideation, like those kinds of things, especially for kids that, are not going to be the typical, I go to school, I learn these things like I was, it would be super, super helpful.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Good to see you.
I love that answer, particularly as somebody that's like trying to figure out themselves how they invest and develop my own investment thesis, which right now is only women-run companies. So I'm not sure my financial planner agrees with that strategy, but it is not his choice. So all right, I'm gonna ask you one more because you talked about this, and I think that this is important. You've shared that you support 25 people, and you're good at your introspection, and it is Mental Health Awareness Month. So we're still living in this online world. But who do you turn to when you're overwhelmed by a decision or unclear on the direction to take?
Yeah, I mentioned that I have some friends that love me no matter what. And so I have a friend that I've known for a long time, 30 years, and we talk on the phone a couple times a week. She's not a business person, but she is the most down-to-earth, pragmatic person I've ever met, and that helps me from the human side, I think. I also mentioned I have like a kitchen cabinet, so people that are good, like I'm not particularly a political person. Like I'm an engaged citizen, but I don't like to chess people. I'm not good at like, moving things around and like hitting something over here so something happens over here. I'm just not complicated that way. And so I have some friends that are very good at political situations and that are good at HR or, that might do kind of similar work that I can call on to say, this weird thing's going on. What do you make of it? And I really encourage people to do that, to have your own sort of informal, not board of directors, but just like advisory bench that you can go to when you're challenged by something.
I love those people because they don't always tell you what you want to hear, right?
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. And that's the kind of people you want around. People that care about you, but, will also say, well, gee, you're just, that's not the look we're trying to achieve. Let's do something else, right?
I had a friend that called me and was like, I loved every part of your Christmas letter except for these two things. And I'm like, oh, now you're critiquing my Christmas letter. I was like, good. She's like, it's how people perceive you. So you should think about that. All right. We're going to be really respectful of time. This was awesome. I'm going to ask both of you a question. Leave us with your one sentence or two sentences of inspiration as we are about to enter a world that is different and we are not sure what those changes mean. And I think that can be scary for people. So Candace, you were the most amazing interviewer. I'm like, oh, can we just hire you once a quarter to do this so that I can listen and not ask questions? You're fabulous.
Well, Julie is very easy. Julie's like, ask me anything, whatever you want. That's the dream.
But I'll start with you. Like, you're super inspirational too. Like, what's your thought that you're going to leave us with as we head out of this event, but also into like a very different world over the course of the next few weeks and months?
We march at dawn. No, I would say, yeah. Thought we were all angry. We're going. Let's go. No, I really seriously, in all genuineness, what I have come to in it was before the pandemic, so I'll say 2 years, is question everything. The shame I feel as a woman who always felt so lucky to be at the table and so glad to be in the room, the things that I did not question and push back on for myself, for the people around me, I will carry with me. And that's the world we're in. But it stops now and you question everything going forward. And maybe it ends up still being the same, but you at least ask the question, why are we doing it this way? Why is that the way it is? So question everything and teach your daughters too.
I love that. I'm an early riser. I'll be there with you at dawn.
All
right. Julie, what do you got for us?
So I'll close with a thought from the poet Rumi. Let the beauty of what you love be what you do. There are 1,000 ways to kneel and kiss the ground.
I love that. And I have to say, you get snaps for your entire ambiance of how you have presented yourself. I have enjoyed this immensely. I've enjoyed both of you. I've enjoyed all of y'all in the chat. This has been fabulous. So yeah, keep the applause coming. And Julie, I've always had a ton of respect for you because you decided to partner with someone that went to my alma mater, the University of Georgia. Yeah. But that, this has made me realize that we look to you as a source of inspiration for a lot of reasons. So thank you.
Thank you for including me. It's really my pleasure. And I hope that something that I shared was helpful. It was really, really great opportunity to just reflect on some things. And Candace, thank you for asking such great questions. I really appreciate both of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Both amazing. Thank you both. Thank you for our attendees. Thank you to Peggy and Packstar for your continued and unwavering support. To Teresa and Bank of America Merrill Lynch for being here tonight and sharing your support for women in industry. Thanks to everyone for spending part of your evening with us online. We know you have children and dogs and partners or just yourself that you want to spend time with. We'd love feedback on tonight's content and the Run the World platform. We are one of their early adopters, so we do sit on their product team. Keep an eye out for our feedback survey. That will come from Ruthie tomorrow. We hope that we can do this in person at our next event. If you're interested in sponsoring, providing wine, a snack, or speaking, let us know. Our Q3 Power Pairing will take place on September 14th. I know that because we will also be celebrating my birthday that